All right, how we feeling? It is officially springtime, which means, at least from where I'm at, the weather gets a lot better. There's no more snow, and you just feel happier. You just feel better. You wake up feeling inspired. You're excited to kick off your day. There was that odd period up north here between the Super Bowl and then now where it's freezing cold and you got no football to watch. But now you're getting a little juiced up. Now you're feeling good. You're like, let's get this rolling. We got the draft around the corner. We're 1 week closer to NFL football 2026. What can we do? And I've spent the last week coming up with content ideas, as I always do. And something that popped into my head is, hey, let's shoot a hot takes episode. Now, my problem with hot takes is I feel like they've gotten a bad rep from the media because more times than not, they're just outrageous clips that are built for clicks. That's just what it is. People make a video, they slap a hot take tag on it, they put it out, make it look semi-professional, and they get crazy profile views and likes and comments, etc. That's not what I want to do. I have 4 specific hot takes for the 2026 NFL season that I genuinely, with 100% of my confidence, believe could come true and will come true that I want to bring to the table, but they're not insane. And I'm not just saying this because it's my show and I want to give myself a good rep. I truly believe they will come true, but I do believe they're well thought out, well planned takes that will provide value to your life. So if you want to check out the individual takes, they're all listed down below in the timestamps with pretty detailed descriptions so you get a good of an understanding of what I'm talking about prior to clicking on it. Or you can watch the whole episode. Either is seriously appreciated, y'all. If you do love the content, please go ahead, like, comment, subscribe. You guys have been great. I cannot complain. I tell everyone in my life, this is the greatest community I've built in my life, and I love it, seriously. So I can't thank you enough for all the support. With all that being said, let's hop right into this episode. It's JV Show, 4 hot takes for this upcoming 2026 NFL season. Kicking us off at number 1, the San Francisco 49ers, in my opinion, are a Super Bowl contender in 2026. Now, this is a team that last season did not get a lot of traction from the media as far as playoffs teams went. And, I am very proud of myself, and I hate to brag, but I am very proud that I pinned the Niners as a playoff team early last season, prior to week 1 of the regular season. Because you look at that strength of schedule from 2025, how could they miss it, right? They won 12 games. They went 12-5, second in the NFC West, 1 game off of being the top seed in the NFC, which is crazy to say. If they beat Seattle, it's a completely different picture. They were 10th in points for at 25.7 points per game, 13th in points against at 21.8. Above average team. They did what they could with the players that they had. They won a playoff game, did not get any credit at all last year. And when you think of this team healthy, well, they look like a playoff team. They look like a Super Bowl contender. And really, that's been the story of my life. And that's the meat and potatoes of this specific segment is, can the Niners stay healthy? Because ever since I've begun watching NFL football, they've been an injured team. They've been a top 5 most injured team in the league, which is weird. And then last year, once again, 2025, they have the team. They have the opportunity to go far in the playoffs. And by the way, a very weak playoff picture, I would add. And they're the most injured team in the league, or a top 5 most injured team in the league. It's the power plant. Is it really the power plant? Like, somebody figure this shit out for me. Because they're always injured. All their star players always on IR by week 5, and it just doesn't add up. But let me paint you a picture, a hypothetical situation, an alternate reality where there are 0 injuries for this Niners team, or very minimal injuries, or even just an average injury rate for this offense and this defense. Well, you look at the quarterback position, you have Brock Purdy, who has the 5th highest playoff wins amongst active starting quarterbacks right now. He's a great quarterback. He's only played for like 3 to 4 years in the league. He's had a ton of success. He was on pace in 2025 for 4,100 passing yards and 38 passing TDs. Top 8 in the NFL in passer rating. That's an incredible season. You could argue that's an all-pro level season. Definitely a Pro Bowl level season. This is a quarterback who has a 4,300 yard, 31 touchdown season under his belt where he led the NFL with an 113 passer rating on the season. That was 2023. Pulled that right from the stat sheet. In 2025, he was on pace with the Niners for 13-plus wins. He went 7-2 in games that he started. I mean, it's hard to debate. You look at the stats, check mark. You look at the proven big game performances, you get another check mark. He's been great in playoff games. He's been great in the regular season. He's won playoff games. He's had success. He's made a Super Bowl. What else can you ask for? I mean, there are a lot of quarterbacks in the league getting paid top-tier money right now that have not produced like Brock Purdy. And believe me, I know it's a different system. Kyle Shanahan's quarterback room is always great. He always finds a way to squeeze all the juice out of any quarterback he's got. But Brock Purdy, you look at his games, when he came back last year, he looked extremely mobile, moving around the pocket like smooth butter. Like, he was great. Playmaking was a check. I think there was a game he scored like 5 TDs. He looked absolutely phenomenal when he came back from his injury late last season, led into the playoffs. They won the playoff game against Philly, get blown out by Seattle. But again, you draw that all the way back to the injuries, the missing guys on defense, the missing guys on offense. We'll get into all of that. Now, you look at the free agency moves and you look at the upgraded weapons offensively. Well, you struck out on Brandon Ayuk with that contract. You struck out on Deebo Samuel with that contract. You make a big addition. In my eyes, one of the bigger moves of free agency, again, the injury concern is big here. I don't love it from that perspective. But from an offensive scheme perspective, a fit perspective, you love bringing in 33-year-old Mike Evans. He's coming off an injury-riddled season. Broken collarbone, it stinks. Believe me, he's had hamstring issues. You're kind of concerned, right? But from strictly a talent, fit player perspective, this is great. He's a prior 11-time 1,000-yard receiver, and that was all in consecutive seasons. Very few guys in history can say they've been that consistent, as consistent as the Mike Evans. He is the face of the franchise for the Tampa Bay Bucs and said, you know what? I want to come play for Kyle Shanahan's offense with Brock Purdy to try and win a Super Bowl. And I don't blame him. And he immediately advances this offense as far as vertical deep threat goes. He checks that box. And also in the red zone, I think he immediately makes them a more favorable option in the red zone. I like their odds now against defenses. Because you have a guy who's, how tall is he? 6'4", 6'5", notoriously been really great jump balls, going up for it in the red zone, making plays for touchdowns. He's that guy. And they didn't really have a guy that stretched the field vertically, that could run down for 50, 60 yards and go make a grab. Now, you could say, Brock doesn't have the arm for that, and, he doesn't have a monster cannon, but having a guy like Mike Evans, you pair that with a guy who was already there for a few years and Ricky Pearsall, who's going to work very well. I mean, that combination is amazing. A deep guy, big body versus a guy that will operate over the middle in the intermediate part of the field, who will ball out on your dig routes, on your whips, your slants. I saw him run a few post outs early on in the season. He's headed into year 3 as well, and I really like Ricky Pearsall. He hasn't really had the opportunity to have a full season under his belt, and you're kind of waiting on that jump, and maybe you get it this year with Mike Evans. But I like his role that he's played on this offense, and I truly do think that he can kind of flourish into that 1,000-yard role if he plays a full season. I mean, you look at what his 2025 pace was, he was on pace for 1,000 yards as a receiver. And again, I do think he's a great complement player to a guy like Mike Evans, who has that deep skill set. Ricky runs great routes across the middle. He creates really solid separation. He's got a pretty good foundational understanding of reading zones and understanding where Brock wants to get him. You watch him in games against Seattle early on last season, a few dig routes over the middle. They find him in open space, right? That's the way Shanny's offense works, right? If Brock understands where he's going and Ricky, who has a good sense of the game, knows what's up, they will connect. So I like those two in the offense. You also have George Kittle. Now, listen, the health, tiny concern right now. He's turning 33, coming off a torn right Achilles. not the best situation in the world, but I would still say he's considered an elite tight end in this league, and at minimum, he will be more than serviceable as a red zone target. You also still have Christian McCaffrey, who's coming off a 2,100 yards from scrimmage season. The bell cow back, the guy, the fuel of this offense. He is the engine of this offense. I feel like you're kind of always holding your breath with him as far as injuries go. Again, like, this is a recurring theme. And if you watch football, you understand what I'm talking about. The Niners, always an injured team. But when they're healthy, when their squad is healthy, when their players are healthy, like we saw in that Super Bowl run, they're good to go. And last year, I mean, with the way CMC was playing, the way they used him, the way he was just bulletproof, nothing could take him down. You were waiting. It's like, okay, George Kittle's gone. Brock Purdy's gone. Nick Bosa's gone. Fred Warner's gone. When is CMC going to drop? He just didn't. And he had an extremely productive season. So you look at their offense healthy, it's like, okay, Mike Evans, Ricky Pearsall. They added Christian Kirk, by the way, as well. That's a great third option. Brock Purdy, who's a great performer. George Kittle, I don't know if I mentioned him in that last, 5 seconds. Christian McCaffrey, obviously. It's like they have players. And by the way, Brock Purdy had one of the highest times to throw in the pocket last year at like over 3 seconds, like 3.15 seconds. Now, maybe the stat's a little bit overblown because, you don't really see how many times it was Brock Purdy making things happen and being an athlete. But for an offense that gets dogged on, I don't think they were all that bad last year. Yeah, 3.17 seconds to throw last year. Time to throw. So, offensively, with Shanahan, too, it's like, all right, this is a slam dunk. Okay, what about defensively? Is that where they're missing? You have a changeup. Out goes Robert Saleh. He gets the head coach opportunity in Tennessee. In comes Raheem Morris, who was previously the head coach in Atlanta. I don't really mind it. I mean, I think losing Robert Saleh is big. He's one of the best defensive minds in football, and he's proven that time and time again with the Niners. But Raheem Morris, I mean, maybe he's just one of those head coaches that was better suited for a coordinator role. I mean, he's failed twice as a head coach. He just hasn't stuck around for longer than 3 to 4 years on a team as a head coach. Now he's getting an opportunity with Kyle Shanahan, who he's familiar with. He worked with him back in Washington, early 2010s. So you have that familiarity, and you have a defense that is, you look at it, it's young in some aspects, and it's also experienced and very talented in other aspects. You have a Fred Warner who only played 6 games last year. That's a major loss. How did they even make the playoffs? How were they productive as a defense? I have no clue. You bring back a guy like Dre Greenlaw, returning 2022, 2023. The guy had 120-plus tackles both years, separately, for the San Francisco 49ers. I was just recently listening to a Luke Kuechly podcast, or a clip of him talking about the combination of Fred Warner and Dre Greenlaw, and he said they're perfect. The pairing is perfect. Greenlaw is like your hammer, right? He's physically dominating. He is tough. He's hard-hitting. And then you have Warner, who sees the game, right? That's not to say Fred Warner doesn't hit hard, but he's an athletic specimen. Like, did you guys see the offseason training clips of him after his injury? He's hopping around like a ninja. I was like, what is this guy training for? Is he climbing the building beside the guy who did the Netflix doc? It's insane, right? So you have those two guys, and the 49ers, I calculated it, have won like nearly 70% of the games when they've both been healthy on the field. That's a slam dunk. And you also have, in my opinion, an underrated young secondary that's very talented and still developing, but they've been reworking that for years now. And one of the best pickups last year that I thought, post-draft was Upton Stout, and he played really well at the nickel position. Now, I've heard they're potentially moving him to the safety position. I don't really know exactly what's going on back there, but I do think that when you look at this defense healthy, the pieces they have, and I don't mind the addition of Raheem Morris, considering that Saleh's out of the building, I think they'll at best, be a top 5 defense, but at minimum, they're going to be average. At average, like 15th, 14th, 13th. I think they're going to be great. As long as they're healthy, which is a big what if, and I get it. But this team, the talent they have, and again, the bottom line, the real take here is that I just trust the coaching. I trust Shanahan because I've seen it time and time again. He's a decorated head coach. He's one of the best play callers in the NFL. His system is quarterback proof. We've seen that time and time again. I think I trust the coaching with Shanahan and Raheem Morris now as the DC to go out there, and even if they have an injury or two to a star player, they'll be fine. It's just they can't lose the whole damn roster like they did last year. And even then, they made the playoffs and won a playoff game. So I'm pinning the Niners as one of my Super Bowl contenders for next year. Definitely not the team I'm picking right now as my Super Bowl favorite. But if they won, I wouldn't be stunned, let's say. I think they'll be in the playoff mix, absolutely. And then after that, I do think they win a few games and potentially contend for a Super Bowl late January, early February. Let's flip to the hot take number 2 of the episode. This one a little bit obscure, so you're going to have to stick with me a little. Let me explain myself. I think the Miami Dolphins had an excellent free agency period. Now, what did they do, JV? They lost everybody. Of course. Absolutely. You look at this team right now, and it's a complete disaster, right? And I agree. That's exactly what it is. It's a complete disaster. Their depth chart at a glance right now, it's laughable. Pull it up, please, if you have an opportunity. The quarterback, $67.5 million for 3 years. Malik Willis. He's only started 10 games in his NFL career. They're betting on a Hail Mary. Their number one wide receiver, it's either Tutu Atwell, Jalen Tolbert, or Malik Washington. That's a complete disaster. Their number one running back, Devon Achane, solid. Fantastic. Might I go there? Phenomenal, right? He's cool. Absolutely. Great talent. But I think they should trade him. That's my personal opinion. And they have a brand new head coach, Jeff Hafley. It's a gong show. It's a shit show, believe me. But the reality of the league is that Miami wasn't winning anything this year, nor were they winning anything next year. Okay, so the team, it wasn't there. They weren't going anywhere. They were carrying this burden of a brutal $50+ million contract to Tua, a franchise quarterback that they way overpaid, way overspent on. And all their talent, when you look at their depth chart from 2024 and 2025, was going to age out by the time they had a real shot at the playoffs again. And Tyreek Hill had a season-ending injury, a torn ACL, and was on the wrong side of 30. So what did they do? They blew up the situation. It's moves that you don't love. As a Dolphins fan, when you see a guy that you draft disappear, like Jalen Waddle, you're like, that sucks. A talented guy who was very productive for our offense, who had so many more great years of playing football, leaves. Why? It's because your team wasn't there. And sometimes you got to make business decisions, and they are absolutely necessary. So what do? They release Tyreek Hill, and at this point in his career, I'll talk about it in a little bit, belongs on a Super Bowl contender, and that's it. He's not going to sit around for this project where the Dolphins aren't even a playoff team for 2 to 3 years. They traded Jalen Waddle. Great. You're getting picks. That's phenomenal. He's extremely talented. It was wasted potential in Miami, but he's young enough and he's going to have a productive career in Denver. You release Tua. Sure. Absolutely. You eat the $99 million of dead cap over 2026 and 2027. That's fine. You get over the hump. Whatever. We move on. We grow. Everyone makes mistakes. You let Bradley Chubb walk in free agency to Buffalo. Fantastic. You trade Minkah Fitzpatrick to the New York Jets. Fantastic. Clean house. Clean house is exactly what you need to do. I think, in my opinion, from a fan's perspective, I would rather watch my team be terrible for a year or 2 or 3. I'd rather us suck, draft, develop, and grow and actually have an opportunity, a chance, than be mediocre, kind of float in the playoff picture, wild card picture, and just get booted out every single year. It's the Steelers' decision. That's what I love to call it every single year. You make a choice. It's A, you hold on to your talent, hopefully draft decently well to make the playoffs and kind of get a few pieces in free agency, but you never escape that mediocrity. Or, hear me out, you move on from tough contracts, talented players, you make some tough decisions, you suck for a few years, but you actually build something to contend in the future. Look at 2028, $0 in dead cap. The Tua contract situation is gone. It's disappeared off the books. It never happened. And you have a ton of cap space, and boom, you're drafting well, you're making moves in free agency, and there's life in Miami again. All because you made the tough decision in 2026 to move off some players that were aging out, were talented, but just had no spot in Miami. And that's why I think they should do the same thing with Achane, but they've already done a phenomenal job up to this point. So I look at this free agency period for Miami, and people rank and judge free agency based on who you bring in and the moves you make. And did you improve your roster? Well, at first glance, at face value, no. They lost all their talent. But when you look at it from a future perspective, when you look at it 3, 4, 5 years, a decade down the line, I think they made the right moves. Obviously you need to have a quarterback for next season. Give Malik Willis a shot, sure. I don't think he's going to get a lot out of Miami just because he's working with nothing. I don't think they made moves that are going to make them a significantly better team next year. They're probably going to win 3 to 4 games. Brand new head coach, defensive-minded. Who's going to score points on offense? Besides Achane, who's probably going to get 1 million carries. But I think when you look at it from a future perspective, it makes a lot of sense. And I judge free agency by making the right decision for your franchise. For the Rams last year, that was bringing in Devontae Adams because they were in Super Bowl win-now mode. You have to understand where your franchise is, where your team is. You got to be honest with yourselves, and that's tough to do sometimes. It's tough to say, hey, Mike Tomlin, you've been around for 2 decades. We're going to let you go. It's not an easy conversation to have, and that's why he is stuck around and had to leave himself on his own terms before the Steelers made a decision. But Miami, they grabbed their nuts. They said, you know what? We suck. We're going to make some moves that are going to sting, but it's going to benefit us in the future. And that's why I think they won free agency. How about that for a hot take? Hey, little sriracha, little paprika. Let's go to number 3. This one might hurt a little people. A few little people. That's okay. I think after watching the Super Bowl run, Kenneth Walker has become overrated since the incredible Super Bowl run. And maybe that stings. Maybe Seattle fans are angry that I say that, or maybe Chiefs fans are touched and hurt. And let's just face the facts, guys, okay? He's the 4th highest paid running back in the league. Okay, his contract is $43 million over 3 years, nearly $14.5 million per year. I've watched Kenneth Walker a lot, okay? Let me just read you off the career stats. Let's get on the same page here, okay? 2022, 1,000-yard rusher, 9 TDs. Solid season. 2023, 900-yard season, 8 touchdowns. Another solid season. 2024, 500 yards, 7 TDs, missed games. That's fine, solid season. 2025, another 1,000-yard season, 5 TDs. Cool. Solid season. Number 4 paid running back in the league kind of seasons? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Who are you kidding? And understand this, right? The fit makes sense, right? But when you look at him from a running back talent perspective, he's not the 4th best running back in the league. He's not. The guys under him that are being paid less money, that are on their 2nd or 3rd contract, is mind-boggling. And then you deep dive into the advanced metrics. It's not like K9 jumps off the chart at all. His yards per carry last year, 19th in the NFL. He's the 4th highest paid running back in the league right now. His yards after contact last year, I thought he was supposed to be a more physical, dominant running back. 21st in the NFL. Okay, what are we paying for here? His receiving yards for running backs? He was 18th in the NFL last year, 282 total receiving yards. All right, he doesn't provide anything exceptional in that category. How about this stat? 33rd in rush yards over expected with only 39. So he's just doing the average. He's doing the average. There are 32 better running backs in that category than him. Rush yards over expected. If you don't know what it is, you can search it up, go into it. It's essentially like how many rush yards you get compared to the rush yards you're expected to get. And if you get more, then you're just doing the most, right? There are guys who had 300, 200, 100. K9's got 39. And listen, I think he's a good running back. I think he's explosive. I think he adds a lot to the Chiefs offense, which I'll touch on right away. But now we're not going to act like he's a top 5 RB in the league, but he's being paid like it. Why? Why? Because people fall into the Super Bowl trap, and I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to fall into the MVP trap. And I'm on record saying it's a great move for the Chiefs, and it is because it addresses a need, but it wasn't overpay. Look at the running backs on their next contract. Like I said, under K9, okay? James Cook is getting paid $11.5 million per year. He just led the NFL in rushing this past season. And the Bills had one of the most dominant rushing attacks in the league, if not the most dominant rushing attack, with James Cook. Jonathan Taylor, who was almost a 1,600-yard rusher with 18 TDs this past season. Kyron Williams, who had over 1,200 yards and 10 TDs this past season. And I like K9. Again, this is not a K9 hate segment. But what it is saying he's getting paid as a top 5 running back in football. And I already think running backs are a luxury and unnecessary for a rebuilding team that is just not ready to win a Super Bowl right now. And then he gets handed $14.5 million, And my eyes, they don't deceive me, guys. I will not fall into the Super Bowl MVP trap, the hype train, because he had a phenomenal run in January and February, and he absolutely did. And believe me, he's been dealing with a shared running back room between him and Charbonnet, and that's cool. And maybe he hasn't been given the opportunity to truly break out. But based on what I've seen, based on the stats, the eyes, you can't convince me he's a top 5 back in football. He might not even be top 8. What I do know with absolute confidence is that Kansas City, they were desperate for any explosiveness in their backfield. Okay? And he's an immediate upgrade from Kareem Hunt and Isaiah Pacheco. That's true. Okay? Absolutely. And he is an explosive upper end back, but in my opinion, not worth that kind of contract. Not worth that kind of money. I look at Kansas City's roster right now and it scares the shit out of me. You just signed Travis Kelce, who was on his way out the front door, I thought. You lose everybody in the secondary. Everybody on the defense is just aging and aging and aging. Like, how much older is Chris Jones going to get? It's like, I don't know. I didn't love the contract. And like I said, and I'll state it again, and I say this all the time on the show, I have 3 premium positions in the league. It's your tackle, it's your edge rusher, it's your quarterback. Then after that, I said interior linemen. Then after that, I said receivers, DBs, linebackers. Then you can get to your running backs. $14.5 million for Kenneth Walker fits the need of Kansas City. Yes, absolutely. I love the move. It made sense. But I just think he's become overrated in NFL circles. I think the recency bias is creeping in, and it's freaking people out, and it's been blown out of proportion now. Like, he's just not a top 5 running back in football. He's not a top 8 running back in football. I'd rather have Jahmyr Gibbs. I'd rather have Jonathan Taylor. I'd rather have James Cook. The list goes on. Anyways, I kind of ranted for that full 7 minutes, but the shocking stuff to me was my deep dive into the stats over Kenneth Walker's last season, which was supposedly supposed to be his best season, and it wasn't all that phenomenal. Like, he was just good. He was just a good back, not worth $14.5 million. And I know the market is expanding and going crazy, but James Cook a year ago just took a super team-friendly deal at 11.5, and so did Kyron. So what the hell are we doing? Anyways, that's my 2 cents. Let's hop over to my 4th and final hot take from the episode. This one has to deal with free agency. There's a free agent right on the market. Pardon me. There's a free agent on the market right now that's, I'm stunned he's still out there. I think Tyreek Hill is still a top 20 receiver in the league. Like, confidently, I would say that. His stats with the Dolphins, and let me read you out the difference, really, between 2022 and 2023 and 24 and 25. 2022, he was a 1,700-yard receiver with 7 TDs, okay? 2023, he was an 1,800-yard receiver, 13 TDs, and I believe that was the year he was voted as the number 1 player in the NFL on the NFL Top 100. 2024, he had 959 yards receiving and 6 TDs. 2025, where he got injured, he had 260 yards and 1 TD. So you're telling me, just by looking at the stats, that the number one player in the world, voted by, I think it's the players, right, that do that list, or the coaches, whoever it is, all of a sudden the next year forgot how to play football. And the age just hit him. And he can't even reach 1,000 yards on the season. That's horseshit. That is crap. Mike McDaniel's offense fell apart, okay? It got figured out. The speed was the only option they had, and they couldn't produce post-2023. That's not a Tyreek Hill problem. That's an offensive, structural scheme issue. And then B, you had subpar quarterback play throughout your entire career in Miami, and he was still posting 1,700-yard seasons with Tua. And the Dolphins are now, they've ended up moving off Tua, eating all that dead cap because he was that damn bad for them. So what is it, right? Is it McDaniel's fault because you fired him? Is it Tua's fault because you fired him too? It's not Tyreek Hill. Yes, absolutely. Maybe the age has gotten to him slightly. Maybe he's not an 1,800-yard receiver anymore, but he can absolutely, I can guarantee you this, hit 1,200 yards in a season still. 8 TDs. 1,000%. You're telling me from week 1 in 2024 to week 2 in 2025, Tyreek Hill had zero games with a reception that was longer than 30 yards. The same guy that everybody calls the cheetah had 0 games for a year with a reception above 30 yards. That's not a Tyreek Hill problem. I'm sorry. It's not. It's really not. I hate to break it to you. It's not. You can't look me straight in the face right now, March 28th, Saturday, and tell me, JV, believe with all your heart, Tyreek Hill could not be a wide receiver 1 on at least half the NFL teams in the league right now. Even at his age. I don't care. And I get it. That's a red flag. He's on the wrong side of 30, and he's coming off a season-ending ACL injury, and that's concerning. But the reality is that as a number 2 option is where I assume he now lands, because he's probably going to go to a Super Bowl contender and take maybe a cheaper deal and be a number 2 beside whoever he's with, that he's not feared, that he's not still an elite talent. Tyreek Hill would immediately become one of the most feared players in the league again, lining up against the second guy in your secondary, not even the number 1 corner. The number 1 corner is traveling whoever you got. Tyreek Hill, he's an afterthought. He's fallen off. He's old. And he burns you downfield for an 80-yard TD. I'm telling you, it was the offense in Miami. It wasn't a lack of talent or a lack of speed. Tyreek Hill has cooked the league for almost a decade. He's still that guy. Imagine a world where he's in Buffalo with Josh Allen, or he's in Baltimore with Lamar Jackson, or he's in Los Angeles with the Chargers and Justin Herbert. It's a slam dunk. It's a slam dunk. The guy is still a top 20 receiver in the league. And by the way, because I calculated everything as far as separation goes, because that's my biggest thing, right? It's is this guy still gaining separation? Is the speed still there? Can he still do it at an elite level? He was a top 20 receiver, 16th to be specific, last season as a separator. The 4 games he played, he was averaging 3.6 yards of separation per route ran prior to his injury. That would place him at 16th overall throughout the season. This was an offense and Tua problem, and you can't change my mind. And wherever Tyreek Hill goes, and he will have his time to, fix his injury, and he's going to have, a good 10-month, 11-month recovery period, even if he comes back, week 3, week 4, ready to go, full speed. Even if he's at 80% of his regular speed, I still want him. We're talking about the Dolphins right now where he just left. We're looking at that receiver room. Who the hell do they have? Tyreek Hill is a starting number 1 receiver on 16 NFL teams in the league right now. Stamp the take. And I think wherever he goes next season, he will be one of, if not the best pickup of the free agency period, and make an impact like very few other receivers can in the league. You remember when OBJ came back and he was phenomenal in LA? Because people just forgot about him because they had Cooper Kupp at the time, and they were rolling out someone else. Was it Robert Woods? I don't know. I'm drawing a blank. But he scored a touchdown in the Super Bowl and had a great run, and he was phenomenal for the Rams. I think Tyreek Hill could be that and more. That and more. Because Tyreek Hill as a receiver, with the speed he has, you just have to honor it. We're talking about a guy that forced defensive coordinators to change the game, to change their game plans, to change how they approached things in order to stop Tyreek Hill alone. That alone is going to save an offense. Lighten the box. Take guys out of the box. Stretch them deep so you can run the ball at a more efficient rate. Everything about Tyreek Hill screams success to me right now. From a player and talent on the field perspective, yes. Which is what I'm focusing on in this segment. So I think he's a top 20 receiver, and I think he will be the steal of free agency. That is my hot take episode. Thank you for rocking with me. If you love the content, if you love this episode, please let me know anything I can improve on. I'm happy to hear the criticism down in the comments. It was a blast, guys. 35 minutes here on the show. I always love it. As usual, take care of yourselves. Stay safe. I'll catch y'all soon. Peace out.